Welcome back to Skyrider Limited. I am Jesse, and today on Kite Bag Tour, it is time to talk about quad kites. So on today's video, we're going to talk a little bit about history, and we're going to take a little exploration of what I carry with me for quad line kites these days. There are a number of different quad line kites out there these days, but believe it or not, quad line kites actually started all the way back in 1899 with the Wright brothers. As the Wright brothers were working out how to fly an airplane, powered airplane, and working on their ideas for control, to test their ideas about wing warping, they developed a quad line kite. So that quad line kite was built a lot like a box kite, but turned on its side, and it had 2 sticks and 4 lines that they used to control it. And they flew it down in Kill Devil Hills on Jockey's Ridge. And that was how they came up with a way to control airplanes. Well, that idea would come and go for a number of years, but the most notable framed quad line kite, the modern quad line kite, is born in 1989 when Revolution Enterprises comes out with a kite called the Neos Omega. But after about a year, that kite would change names to the Revolution 1 or the Rev 1, and the rest is sort of history. So hang tight, I'm going to go grab a kite, and we're going to start talking about it. So Revolution Enterprises was a carbon company first. They started working back in 1987 and first developed a carbon frame for their quad line kite. Joe and Dave Hedzicki would develop a series of carbon called Advantage, and they would go on to be used in all of their kites and a number of other quad line kites, a number of other kites over the years. In 1990, the Rev 1 became the Rev 1 from the Neos Omega, and that's what this is. We have a standard Rev 1 right here. You can see it is a big kite. It's about 9 feet, and this was what started quad line in the modern era. There were soft kites on and off foils, quadrifoil, Sky Tiger, a number of them Elliott built kites, number of kites over the years. Most of those found their way into traction kites with some notable exceptions in competition. One of them being Brian Vanderslice, who used to fly a foil built by active people in quad. And what was really cool was it had a completely different set of flight skills, but was still a quad. So it was a lot of fun to see what he could do with that. So this is the biggest of the family, and it was the first of the Revs. A couple years later, they would come out with a Rev 2, which is a smaller version. So hang tight, and I'm going to grab that. So that pink and blue Rev 1 was my dad's first Rev. And he'd get another couple more Revs. I'll show you a couple of the other bags that I have with me, but we have an indoor and ultralight one. Somebody gave me a home-brewed vented Rev 1. He had a couple more kites that were specially done for his team, his original team, Air Atlantis. So the Rev 2 would come out a year or so after the Rev 1. And I've told this story before, but my early sort of childhood memories were of bedtime stories made up of the instruction videos for the Revolution kites. So I learned to fly by watching the videos that came with the kites, and they were VHS tapes, and I probably wore them out. So I've told this story a few times that the first sort of moment my dad knew that I could fly kites, he and I were out at the beach. I was pretty little, 3 or 4, and he had kind of turned his back on the kite for a minute to talk to a friend who had wandered up on the beach. At some point his friend goes, "When did Jesse learn to fly a Rev?" And Dad goes, "Jesse can't fly a Rev," and he turns around, and there I am flying his Rev 2. Which was a Sutaft Rainbow Rev 2, which we still have. And thus, I was given my first Rev 2, and this is it right here. So this is my Rev 2, and if I close my eyes and think about quad line flying, this is probably the kite I picture. Framed in Advantage 3 wrap. It's got a 2-piece leading edge like all the Rev 2s, shorter uprights because it's about half the size of a Rev 1, and as you can see on the back here, it features magic sticks, or magic quad sticks. Magic sticks were a Rhode Island creation. A guy by the name of Bob McBroom cooked them up, and they were really popular with the Rev 2 flyers. They took the kite that was very, very twitchy and faster and a lot more fun for competition, and gave it a lot more trick ability because it helped kind of keep the tips together. The West Coast guys call them, training wheels or cheater sticks, and we call them trick sticks. They were sort of a gateway for a lot of the innovation that would come along, including axles and all sorts of 3D work that you really can't do on a kite without them. Until later, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So I have gone away and 2 magic sticks over the years a couple of times. This set is one of the original ones. So it's all surgical tubing and gas line. And yeah, on the Rev 2s in particular, I really like them because you can see they just sort of keep those tips in check and just sort of help the kite really, really be crisp and sharp. So that's a Rev 2. So in these guys, we probably still have, close to a dozen, including a couple of my dad made. I carry this one, a vent, and a UL with me still. Just so, if I'm in the mood to fly the smaller kite, I can do that. Hang tight, and we're going to get the 3rd kite out. So, the Revolution 1 and 2 continued in production for most of Revolution's run. However, in 1995, they debuted a middle size. It kept some of the more nimble behaviors of the 2, but a bit more stability of like the 1. And that is the 1.5. So that kite came out in 1995. So this is my current set of Revolution 1.5s in my custom all black and white belly. So this kite is still in production with them under the name New York Minute, but it's basically the same kite just with a different sail graphic. This one is my ultralight, and I'll show you some of the tweaks on it that I've made over the years here in a second. So in the early 90s, my dad and I did change away from flying Revs, and we were sponsored by a company called Guildworks, and they developed the quadline kite called the Synergy Deca. It was Mark Ricketts, and the original factory was in Manchester by the sea, Massachusetts. Then they were in Beverly. So we flew that kite and helped with the development of it. His initial 6 into the Comp 6, and the indoor kite also became the Great Deca. At one point it was called the Deca Zero. The Minergies, the Deca 1. Somewhere out there there's a VHS where I, 6 was flying the 1 in like 20 miles an hour of wind for the demo video. So that kite was really cool. I'll put a picture of it here for you. It was a more 3-dimensional shape, so it had a lot more play to it. But relationships changed, and we ended up going back to Revolution shortly after the launch of the 1.5. So our initial 1.5s were white with a color block, so it was a color block high and low on each wing. We had a full set of those each, so UL standard and vent. That was all there was back then. When they updated that kite for the first time, they went to something called an SLE, or super leading edge. Hold tight, let me grab one of those, because I do keep one with me still. So that super leading edge is significantly fatter, so if you can see that stick there versus the sticks, a little bit of wind, versus the sticks in the sail here, you can see the difference in diameter on those. So this was an idea to make the kite glide a little better, but it did make the kite significantly stiffer. You can see how much stiffer this big beefy rod is. And so it was a little harder to do some of the snappier tricks. So we would ultimately go back away from these. This is my 3rd set of Rev 1.5s, the black kites here. My 2nd set is still out there. I actually gifted the skins to those to Devin from Canvas a couple years ago, and I think he's still flying them. This set is pushing 20 years old now, actually a little over, and has been my workhorse for all that time. Competition all over the world. I've made some tweaks over the years. About 10 years ago, I switched to what's called the French bridle. It was developed by a team called Crazy Drivers, and works a lot like a dual line turbo bridle for a quad. So it changes the wing loading from center to over the uprights. And you can kind of see that bridle here and its difference. And you can also see that about 2 years ago, I went back to flying magic sticks on these kites. The result has been sort of a return to really enjoying my quad flying with the Magic Sticks on. I can do a lot of the stuff I used to do on the 2, but on the larger kite. So that's a tour of revs. There's a few more framed quadline kites out there that all sort of, at least surface deep, look like this sort of Revolution bow tie shape. You've got the Freelines and the Ocean Shores kites, which are sort of developed off that shape. You have Three Winds, which is developed off that shape with another different bridle. The Gin, which is John Baresi and Brett Marshall's development, and updates the sail shape as well as a different bridle. And there's a number of other people building them out there. Elliot Shook builds his Compass Roads mesh quads, which are absolutely beautiful, and they're a lattice work sail that really does a great job of smoothing out bumpy wind, and will, if you have the right venting percentage, go all the way up to 50-55 miles an hour of wind. And if you're interested in quad, I highly recommend you check out those. Revolution is still building kites. They are also building a newer line of kites called the Spider and the Tarantula, I believe, and they also do their Eagle and the new Condor. Also cool kites to check out. So that's the kites, but let's take a look at some of the other gear. So hang tight, and I'm going to grab handles, which is probably one of the most debated topics in quadline flying. So I carry 4 different sets of handles with me these days, and here they all are kind of in a jumble. I will pick them up kind of one at a time now and just show you what we got here. So indoor handles, these are a set of Revolution indoor handles I've been really fond of for 20-ish years. I still carry a rev, an indoor rev, and this is the only set of handles I'll fly that on. They are longer and a little shallower than my normal outdoor handles. And they just have good feel and flow, very light, and sort of work perfectly with that kite because they were designed for it. Going down the length line, so this is the original Rev 1 length. I think they're 13-inch handles. So all my outdoor handles were done for me by Glenn Haynes. They're all thread wrapped like a fishing rod, and they all have these cool custom grips on them. So this is my larger set for the Rev 1. And also what I flew the Decas on. So that's that one here. This is my workhorse. So this is the 1.5 length. These are the 11-inch, I think. And like I said, I've flown on this handle for 25 years. Changed the leaders a couple of times. You can see I run a very short brake leader, very long lift leader, or drive leader. So I'll basically tune off that top leader unless it's a situation where I need more brake than all the way out on that upper leader can provide. So then, because again we started in the way back, here are the shortest handles. These are the Rev 2s. These are 7 inches, I think. And again, you can see with that very short brake leader, very long upper leader. There are a lot of debate out there about longer handles, 13s, 15s, 19s. Snagless, not snagless. I have a couple of sets of snagless handles. I have some of the early Rev ones. They're nice. I've never had a particular problem with snagging the top of my handles on the traditional D-ring style, so I've never felt a need to change away from them. I am very comfortable with the length of handle that I fly, but I highly encourage you, if you can get into quadline flying, talk to people, try some kites, try some different handles, see what works for you. Your hand, your arm strength, your wrist strength, your arm length, all of that's going to play a factor in how you choose your handles and what length handle is appropriate for you. So that's handles. Hang tight, and we're going to take a quick look at my bag, which is a little bit of a mess, but we'll take a look over there and talk about that. Okay, so this is my quad bag. This is the bag I've been using for the last 12 or so years. It was given to me by Ben D'Antonio, who was at Revolution at the time. And it's been my workhorse. I've used it to travel. When I would go to competitions, I'd have my 1.5 set, my indoor, and I'd actually put dual line kites in here as well. These days, dual line kites get their own bag. but you know, this was small enough I could actually carry all my gear on with me. A couple of things in here that I really love. Spare stick pocket over here. Sleeves are big enough for a couple of kites, so in here we have indoor rev and the UL1. Standard and vented one. These are a UL standard and vented 2. UL and standard 1.5, and the vent and mid-vent 1.5 over there. Handles are arranged there. The indoor handles, and you can see my ground stake line there, which with quad is really helpful. I'll go in the outer pocket out here. And then lines. Lines, I fly the same Climax ProTech German line that I fly in dual line. Here I carry basically 150-pound line in more or less 80 feet and more or less 120 feet. 120 for team, 80 for individual demonstrations. If I were to compete again, would be the length I'd fly. I also have the 80 foot in 100 pound, and then I carry some 50 pound by about 45 feet, 15 meter. That's for sort of playing with crowd and just sort of urban flying and having a good time. I also carry a set of 12s and 15 footers for indoor flying. So that's the bag, that's the gear. I hope you enjoyed this sort of look into quadline kites, and I'm really excited because on one of the next tours I get to show you my new set of quadline kites that are on their way and my new quadline bag. Until then, thanks so much for watching and subscribing and liking and sharing, and we will see you out there, Skyrider.